for listeners who've never heard of it, welcome to the world of these PTGers, of which we too are definitely part of that world. But at Boulder Crest, we opened the first privately funded retreat center in the country for combat veterans and their families. You know, Ken would always say that his goal at Boulder Crest was to help people be as productive at home as they were on the battlefield. And we went around the country and we asked leading mental health professionals what works for people, especially people who've been to war, who are struggling mightily with a range of challenges to live a good life. And they said that nothing works to do that, but more importantly, that that's not the point of the system. The system is, you know, let's do a diagnostic to figure out what your symptoms are and help you manage and mitigate the distress associated with those symptoms. It's like, but that is a diminished life, definitionally. And then we met Rich Tedeschi, and Rich started to describe the work of Posttraumatic Growth, and it made so much sense to us. And when we asked Rich, had he ever studied post-traumatic growth in the military community, he said that he had, and he had studied it with the prisoners of war from the Hanoi Hilton. And so you had 591 men who came home from between February to May of 1973, having spent between 2.5 months and almost 9 years in captivity in North Vietnam. And they were battered, isolated, tortured, and starved for long periods of time. And these men start to come home, and they got interviewed by a psychiatrist in the Air Force named William Sledge. And he's asking them, you know, like, how you doing, all the rest of it. And he doesn't believe them. He doesn't believe what they're telling him. Because he, too, believes that, okay, if you put people in a situation like that, they're going to come home and be very damaged. PTSD was not a diagnosis at the time, but certainly, like, you know, struggle and lots of problems. Like, they had words for that. And he interviews them for a year. And at the end of it, he's like, okay, like, I believe you. And 80% of them said they were better off. What they have found longitudinally in assessing these guys, every year they do a physical at a place called the Mitchell Center for POW Studies, comparing to aviators who were fought but didn't get shot down. And on every measure of life, their vision, their heart health, their divorce rate, you name it, they've lived happier and healthier and better lives than their counterparts. And so it was this amazing kind of story and testament to life and to what's possible. But I think the other thing is, I think there's so much in that story that's so rich as a reminder. And certainly it wasn't that they got shot down and we're like, oh, I got this, and like didn't suffer, right? And that's the other story we like to tell. It's either bad thing, bad life, or bad thing, amazing human being who transcends any sort of like normal human response and just figures it out, and magically, like, they just turn, you know, lemons into lemonade. But that's not what happened. I mean, you know, to a person, they would say about Stockdale, their senior officer, that what made him a compelling leader was that he never pretended to be unaffected by his circumstance, that he too suffered greatly, that he too felt like a failure. And he did the same thing he made everyone else do, which is really without knowing that he lived the phases of post-traumatic growth. And the long answer to a short question is that I think that's, you know, a big piece of the puzzle is so much of life is how we think about life. It's the perspective we put on things.